as I said at the outset, we need to bear with some basics of a culture because it is so important, culture and worldview. So let's check out some basics of a culture to prepare ourselves better for our studies of worldview and Christian worldview. The first point I prepared here is this one. Culture is much more complex and dynamic than we generally know. Culture in everyday terminology, most ordinary people, when they hear of a culture, they basically think of what one eats or what one sings or dances or foods, that kind of thing, right? That is a part of culture, but that's not all. More important is actually what underlies those things, okay? So this captures that. Culture is much more complex. Complex means it has a depth, okay? It's not only what you see at external level, but there are important things under that, okay? That's a complexity. And dynamic means it changes over time, dynamic. It's not static, okay? So culture is deep, and the culture is changing over time. They do this more than we generally know. Okay, the second point, the culture constitutes the most important part of a self-identity to the extent of almost identical. We'll come to that shortly, but this point shortly. But what it says here is culture is one of the most important parts of what constitutes a person's identity. My identity, like who I am, is very much determined by my culture, right? If you are Filipino, then Filipino culture is very much part of, most important part of who you are, right? So that's what it says here. And to the extent of almost identical means out of three things constituting a person's self-identity, culture is dominant. So almost to the extent of identical. That's what I mean here. All right. Now let's look at culture's structure or construct. Culture is of a three-level construct, okay? Level 1, level 2, and bottom level, right? Level 1 is external level, the one we see outside, which consists of behaviors, which consists of languages, consists of food and clothes, dances, those are symbols and others, right? And second is middle level, which is not seen, unseen, but which is very important because this consists of values and beliefs, okay? People behave, people act following their values and beliefs, all right? So this is very important, even though it's not seen. And below that, the core level, the bottom level is worldview, which actually is behind values and beliefs. Values and beliefs of a person, of a culture, comes from one's worldview, right? So these two are very, very important, more important perhaps. But these three levels are all interconnected, okay? All right, then next question is, what does constitute worldview? How is worldview shaped up? Okay, according to anthropology and other studies, results of researches, worldview is largely shaped by people's religion, traditional religion, people's myth, the story they hear from their grandpa and grandma, okay, from early on. And then dominant ideology of the day, okay? What is dominant ideology of the day for East Asia particularly? It's modernity, it's a globalization, all right? It's economic development, for example. These are dominant ideology of the day, and these three shape up worldview, okay? Of these three, these two, people's traditional religion and then dominant ideology of the day are more important. All right, this is looked at by way of schematic. I'm sorry, this is the schematic. The insides are in Korean, and this I draw from my published book, published in Korean, and I have no technical capacity to change this into English, okay? But this is okay because here are all, explained in English, okay? Self-identity and culture, right? One of the basics of culture. Culture and self-identity. Self-identity is formed by three things. First thing is a common human nature, right? We are all human, right? We all share human DNA. Is there anyone who here has monkey DNA? No, right? We all are human. So we have a human nature common, all right? But we as an individual are also different because of our personalities, okay? We have a different personalities, characters, all right? So these two, and of course, culture. These three form one's self-identity, right? And of these, culture is predominantly important, shaping up one's identity. These three forming one's identity, okay? All right, continuing this three levels of a culture. External level, here again in Korean, but these are, in English these are what go in here. External level, cultural products, behaviors, language, symbols, and rituals. Okay? Symbols include language, okay? Rituals include a lot. Worship services, baptism, all those things, okay? These are what constitute external level of a culture. And below that, in the middle level are values and beliefs, okay? One's values and beliefs are so important, okay? And these are the driving forces of these, okay? And these values and beliefs are shaped up by worldview. That's why worldview is called the core of, culture, okay, bottom level. And out of these three, the only level one is seen. Okay, other two are unseen because it's below, right? Okay, now the next question is what does constitute worldview? Okay, worldview, the last one, the bottom level culture is largely formed by people's religion, myths, and dominant ideology. As I said already, of these, traditional religion and ideology are more important elements than myth. Okay. All right. Let me just a little bit. Okay. Traditional religion. For example, in Philippines, most of Filipinos they have Catholic, right? Traditional Catholic, old-fashioned Catholic, I should say. Okay, that's a Filipino. Most of Filipinos' religion. But Filipinos, in addition to Catholicism, most of them are also, they have their own view of the world, which is quite animistic. Okay, animism is very important, particularly among tribal people, right? So that's our preaching and mission context. If you visit, for example, tribal people to teach Bible and to preach to them, then not only Catholicism of Philippines, but perhaps more importantly, their animism, animistic worldview is more important. That is a more important context for your preaching and teaching, right? So you have to touch on that. Okay? You have to change that, transform that by the power of gospel. From now on, we move into the more specific content of worldview. As I said at the outset, worldview answers, or worldview addresses big questions, okay, of the life and of the world. And these big questions are called also foundational questions, because that makes up, the world. Okay, foundational questions, worldview answers. So we need to know what these are. There are 7 what we call foundational questions, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7 up to here. And there is the last one, which is what we call existential question. Okay? So I listed up here 8 important questions comprising both the foundational and existential questions, okay? And which are addressed by any worldview. Okay? All right, so first foundational question is, what is the prime or real reality of the world? Prime or real reality, reality world is what we see and what we sense outside, okay? But then that reality is something created or made by something else, which is actually the prime reality, right? The reality under the reality we see is what you call prime or real reality, which is quite often God or spiritual world, okay? According to, for example, Christian worldview, but in other worldviews as well, there is a prime or real reality, okay? The reality which is under usual reality we see, okay? That's a prime or real reality. And if it is God or spiritual world, this is what we often call theism, okay? Study of God and spirit, okay? And second question is, what is reality or world, okay? What is reality or world? This is a foundational question. What is it? The reality we see, touch, and sense, or world, depending on different worldviews, reality or world is defined very differently. For example, according to Hindu worldview, Hindu teaching, reality world is not real thing, okay? It is illusion, as you know, right? What a definition, right? But according to Christian worldview and Confucian worldview, reality of world is real, okay? Real world, which is something we need to live in and then we need to handle, with responsibility, okay? But according to Hindu and even Buddhism, similar, reality is only an illusion, okay? It's not a real thing, okay? Quite different, depending on worldview. That's why worldview answers, these foundational questions. And number 3, another important question, what is a human being? Humanism. Who are we? Who am I? Human being. Okay. Again, depending on worldviews, there are many different teachings on who we are, who human beings are. Just one quick, thing I would like to say here is only Christian worldview, gospel worldview, views a human being as most important pinnacle of creation, but it says that human being has a duality of a nature, human nature, okay? Both good and bad, okay? Only Christian worldview teaches, that human being is such, not other worldviews, okay? So again, depending on different worldviews, the definition of who human being is different. Okay, the next one, what is death and is there life after death or afterlife? This is, most serious concern most people have, or a deep question, what is death? And is there life after death or afterlife? Actually, this question is not often taken up these days. You know why? Because modern people, those people who are stuck with the science and technology and all those good things, they are so afraid of that they don't want to take this up. Okay, they usually avoid it, as you know very well, all right? But this is a real, concern, inescapable concern everyone has to face. Okay, so we have to know what it is, and of course we need to know if there is a life after death or afterlife. Very important question, isn't it? Right? Again, depending on worldview, view on this is different. Okay. Next one is question of morals and ethics. What is good and what is evil? Okay. Christian worldview teaches, very clearly and explicitly on what is good and what is evil, and there are many moral teachings, because our God is a moral God. Okay. But, for example, modern ideology like postmodernity, they don't believe in ethics or morals, right? Ethics, morals is a personal choice, basically. That's what they say, right? Whatever they feel good, they go for it, and that's good. Whatever bad, they just throw away. Okay, that's bad. Terrible, consequences come out of that. Depending on this, okay. Next one is it possible to know anything or truth? Epistemology. Okay, is it possible to know anything? Is there truth? For example, all right. That's the question. And again, different worldviews gives different answer to this question. Postmodernity, they don't say. They say that there's no truth at all. It's all subjective interpretation only, right? While we Christian faith, gospel worldview teaches clearly that we can know, we can come up with truth, because our God is all-knowing God, right? He teaches us the truth, and we can learn from Him, and also being created in His image, we have an internal capacity to know. Okay, a huge difference again, right? Depending on which worldview you go by. Next one is, what is life and history? Is life meaningful? And this is another very deep question. And these days, young people particularly who follow postmodernity values and lifestyles, they don't care much about these things, okay? But deep inside their heart, they have this question, okay? So we have to rouse, we have to wake them up, okay? So that they would need the answer to this question, okay? Because our gospel gives the answer to these, okay? Best answer. Is life meaningful, for example? Again, depending on different teachings of worldview, meaning can be different, right? If one follows a postmodernity, pleasure-seeking, whatever, you feel good, you do it, and that's the meaning of life, okay? But we don't see that's the meaning of life, right? That's the way to destruction, right? Eternal doom. Lastly, but not leastly, this question of sufferings and evils, okay? Existential questions. Why are there sufferings in the world? Why are there evils in the world? Okay? This deep existential question is answered by worldview.